Welcome back to Touring the AFC South. I am your host, Mike Patton. And of course, we've got to talk about this Indianapolis Colts and Denver Broncos game last night. And I brought in someone that has a pretty good viewpoint on the Denver Broncos. Of course, he more than likely watched the game last night, albeit probably something he wants 3 hours back for. But I'm going to bring in from CBS News Colorado, Mr. Justin Adams. What's going on, man?
First of all, Mike, thank you as always for having me on. I do need one clarification though. It wasn't 3 hours. It was 3.5 hours of my life that I would like to have back. That was an experience to say the least. That was yeah. I'm still trying to. Wow is the only word I can say about that game. That was wow. That was terrible.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. It's pretty bad. And I just don't know what to say about the I don't know what that noise was. But anyway, I don't know what to say about the Denver Broncos last night. The offense is still an issue.
Hmm.
And Russ is not looking like Russ, and the offense is not moving along. So, in your opinion, who is more at fault for this offense looking this bad? Is it Russ? Is it the coaching staff? The players just not getting on the same page? Not enough letting Russ cook. Well, what is it going on? What's going on in your opinion?
I don't know, man. I mean, I think when you say let it rush cook at this moment, you're. I will say this in all seriousness. The Broncos right now at this moment just had a press conference about an hour ago. This team is without their starting left tackle, the Garrett Bowles, who broke his leg. He's out for the year. Already without your starting running back. You're already without your second best wide receiver, and Tim Patrick for the rest of the season because of a torn ACL. Your right guard, your right tackle, those are two guys who you haven't played with this year. So all these plans you have for your team, number one, they're not going to happen. I mean, it is what it is. You're playing with a lot of backups on this team. But the reality is when you look at a game like you had yesterday, there were several different players where you say, man, yeah, you could put it on your offensive line. You could put it on wide receivers. But at the end of the day, it goes back to two people, Nathaniel Hackett and Russell Wilson. You had an opportunity inside the red zone where Jerry Jeudy was wide open and you missed him. Now, don't get me wrong, on the first drive, you had Jerry Jeudy on a backside throw, hit his shoulder. He tried to grab it with one arm. And those are the type of plays where it's difficult, but you look and say, hey, you got to make those plays, right? You can look at another play where it goes right to your tight end in the end zone as well. Hadn't hit his breadbasket, and then he just lost it. So it's a little bit of both. It's a little bit on both sides. And I know a lot of people, when you look at that fourth down and one play, final play of the game, would you have went for the field goal? Would you have ran the football? The play was there. KJ Hamler's wide open on the right side, and he's wide open for a couple of seconds. And then you force it into Cortland Sutton at the end. So a lot of people have to really look at themselves a lot, and a lot of buyer's remorse, I would say, in Denver right now.
Definitely, I would say that. Well, you can't say any buyer's remorse on that defense. The defense definitely kept them in the game. Bradley Chubb is tearing things up, making things happen, and definitely had Matt Ryan looking for him all night. And Patrick Surtain, the second, is actually doing a great. The offense is doing, still hanging in there, still making things happen. Browning was making things happen until he got injured last night. But a lot of different players, a lot of different pieces are making things happen despite what's going on with the offense. What can you say about them?
Yeah, and that's going to be an issue from this point forward. Unfortunately, like obviously, what you see with Bradley Chubb, Baron Browning had a really good game as well, of a sack and a half at least. But you now lose Ronald Darby for the year, so that's the second quarterback that you have for the Broncos. So now you're going to have to put somebody else in that position to be your number two. So the injuries are starting to pile up. It's football, we get it. It is what it is. But the injuries are starting to pile up, and at some point, your offense will have to do something more than 9 points. They have to do something, and they have to be better in the red zone. Even in overtime, you thought once Jerry Jeudy caught that pass to get him inside the 15, it was like, all right, ball game. Like you started to think like this game is over, but every time Every time the Broncos get inside that red zone, it's either a penalty, it's holding, it's offsides, it's an incomplete pass, it's drop passes. It's something that happens for this team not to be able to go and score, and that has to change immediately.
Yeah, it definitely does. I mean, it was rough to watch. Rough
Yeah,
to watch for sure. I mean, you got fans leaving the game before overtime is over.
right.
I just, you know, it's got to be bad.
No, Mike. You have people who left before regulation. That's how bad it is. And you have to understand one thing about Denver too. And this is me taking off the journalism hat, broadcast hat, to the pure growing up in Denver hat. You would have never seen fans leave early, especially in a game that could be won. You would never see true Bronco fans leave early. And so what happened last night is something that we've never seen before. I've never seen before, but is indicative of what has happened on offense. And people are tired of seeing that. They have saw that for the last 6 years as well with terrible quarterback play. And you have all your hopes up with Russell Wilson within the first couple of games. And then you get the type of performances that you have right now. It's just not working out.
I hear you there. I hear you there. Now, of course, there could be, in my opinion, I think maybe a Chris Harris reunion, perhaps.
Mhm.
That's a guy that's still out there. He's still available. So that's a
Yeah.
that's a thought. But we'll see what happens when it comes to replacing Ron Darby out there on defense. But of course, I want to speak on the Colts too. The Denver Broncos weren't in this game by themselves. The Colts offensively, I mean, what do you make of them? I mean, of course, they have injuries up front, things like that. But what do you make of them so far?
You know what? Football is won in the trenches. And so when you start a game, you make all these changes up front, especially several guys on the roster who have already been paid as well. That's a problem. But then you look at the Colts, and there might be the weirdest football team, a team that beat Kansas City, a team that obviously beat the Broncos, and then tied with the Houston Texans. So you have no idea really what this team is. Neither team, to be very honest, Broncos, Colts, are not a playoff team. The only difference is the Colts at least have their first round draft pick. The Broncos don't. Seattle has. I would say Philip Lindsay looked very good in a couple of carries that he had, and he still shows that he has that burst that he could be able to make something happen in between the tackles. And maybe just because of I know Naheem Hines, he was out with that concussion, but you saw something with Philip Lindsay where you say maybe we could go and utilize him within our offense, especially once Jonathan Taylor comes back healthy. Thought the passing game was okay. There's nothing special. You have some really good tight ends out there. I really like that. So for the Colts, they just have to figure out a way how to keep games close to try to win them in the end. Matt Ryan is not Matt Ryan. He's not the same guy that we saw before. That's clear. Nor does he have the same pieces. There is no Julio Jones in his prime coming out there for the Colts right now. So they're going to have to figure out a way how to generate some points, and it may have to happen within a strong running game and really relying on those tight ends.
Yeah, honestly, just looking at the running game, even that may have been an issue because you're dealing with a lot of pieces missing in offensive line. You're dealing with, just one play you see Pryor get just beat badly.
Yeah.
He whiffed on Bradley Chubb and just basically, I wouldn't put it all necessarily on Matt Ryan in terms of that issue, but I mean, he definitely isn't the same Matt Ryan he once was. Of course, he is an MVP Matt Ryan. Definitely.
No. And even to go back on Pryor on that sack, right? Bradley Chubb, it just shows that he's that top 5 guy who was drafted, I believe, in 2018 or 17. The talent is starting to show. He's finally healthy. So to see him making moves like that is not surprising. But to see the way the Colts, I mean, even when they tied up the game on that field goal, the ball was fumbled 3 times, right? Matt Ryan completed the pass where Bradley Chubb literally hit the ball. And so, and then there's a fumble on another play. So the Colts really have some issues on the offensive line. They have to figure out, but you know what? A lot of teams in the NFL have issues on the offensive line. And so it is what it is. Figure out ways how to get the ball out the hands of Matt Ryan faster, because what he wants to do is take those deep shots. And right now in this offense, he's not able to do so.
I hear you there. Well, I will say that Alec Pierce definitely looked better and better. He definitely looked solid, and that's something to build on with him and Michael Pittman Jr. Just got to get the block in, of course, to do anything. But defensively, There's one man that a lot of people had forgot about until last night. That would be Mr. Stephon Gilmore. And I don't know why Russell Wilson was trying to try him over and over again, but he tried him at two of the wrong times, and it ended up being an interception, which I don't know why they threw the football in that instance. Anyway,
Neither do I.
and then they end zone. So it's to win the game. And I'm like trying to figure out why would you even test him to begin with? That's just me. But I mean, what can you say of his performance last night, just showing up and when his team really, really needed him?
He showed the reason why he was, I believe he was Defensive Player of the Year a couple of years ago, if I'm not incorrect, right? Yeah, he showed he's still that guy. He showed that when he was released or he was traded by the Patriots a couple of years ago, went to Carolina, and then went to the Colts. He showed that he's still that type of corner. And I'll tell you right now, coming from a Broncos point of view, you would love to have that type of asset to your roster right now. Look, when I looked at the game against not only the Broncos, but also against the Chiefs a couple weeks ago, there was a distinction. Like the defense was different when he was out of the lineup than when he was in the lineup. And you could see it again last night, is that you're going to try him on 3rd down and 4 with an opportunity to put away the game, or you could just run the ball and kick a field goal. And Colts haven't done anything on offense all day. But it just shows that this guy still has the experience and still has the ability to be able to make plays on defense. Now, think about this. You get Shaquille back healthy. Hopefully, he could be able to heal up. You get the rest of your roster, for the most part, starting to get back healthy. This defense could start to gel into something that could be fairly special, that could really help on an offense that needs as much help as they can. So if the Colts are going to continue to win, they can win in that way, especially with the really good defensive line that we saw last night. So those are the type of pieces that I like to see. But hey, I mean, look, you tried somebody who's a Pro Bowler, all pro player. You try him in the end zone with the game on the line. 9 times out of 10, you're going to get snake bitten.
Yeah. Just bad. I still don't understand that play call, but that's just me. But we're going to go back over to the Denver Broncos. Okay. the season is not over, although still the Kansas City Chiefs control the AFC West as usual right now at this point. Where does Denver go offensively? They're one of the worst teams offensively in the NFL, and they really shouldn't be with the amount of talent they have. But they're one of the worst offensive teams in the NFL. Where do they go from here to even get better?
Yeah, I think they'll actually be the worst with 9 points. They might be right behind the Colts. I don't know exactly how the numbers will line up. The number one thing is they need to stop being in shotgun. And I think a lot of people, when they say let Russ cook, they have this idea that you could put him in the shotgun and let him do his thing. Well, a lot of times he's better footwork-wise. He's better for play action. He's right under center. So the number one thing that I would do differently is put him under center, number one, for the majority of your plays, especially in 3 wide receiver sets. I would definitely go and do that. Somehow, some way, you got to have a running game. Now you're without Garrett Bowles. You're starting left tackle. And so you have to find a way how to stay ahead of the sticks. You can't have 2nd down and long. You can't be as predictable as well, but you have to go and give your quarterback a chance to be able to see guys open with the play action pass, and that starts with a really good running game. I mean, Melvin Gordon didn't fumble, so that's a plus, right? So,
well, hold on, time out. He did fumble. They just didn't call it.
Right, you're right. He did fumble down. Well, I mean, even that there, right? God, it's so bad, man. But and the reality is that you have to go to what works, and you have to trust your guys. You have to trust the KJ Hamlers. It was at least good to see him back on the field, right? But you need to get as many pieces as possible. They're hoping that a tight end by the name of Greg Dulcich, they drafted him in the 2nd round, that he could, 3rd round rather, from UCLA. They're hoping that he could be healthy. Here's the issue with him: he's not the best blocker in the world, maybe not even an average blocker. But you have to go get some more firepower out there on the field for Russ. And to me, this is the 2nd time that I've seen, at least glaringly to me, KJ Hamler on the final play, wide open, didn't see him. Before Javonte Williams got hurt against the Houston Texans, another AFC South team, he was wide open in the end zone right in front of Russ and didn't see him. You may have to simplify this offense. And I mean really, really simplify it to the point where it's like, Russ, here's a couple of different, here's your progressions. Here's your lead progression. Here's your secondary progression, and then run, and go from there. Hopefully, Russ doesn't get hurt, but you have to trust him a little more on his legs. Those are simple things that I think you could do. A great stat by Jeff Legwall with ESPN: 11 of the sacks so far this year has been in shotgun and 3 wide receiver sets. You got to get out of that. Put Russ under center and trust the rest of your team.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty simple there. And, definitely the shotgun wasn't always the move for him when he was having great success in Seattle. So I'm still trying to figure this thing out and trying to understand that. And, another thing, of course, you mentioned that the bodies that were missing defensively. Mm-hmm. Do you think they can keep this up defensively, keeping them in games like this?
Well, they'll get Randy Gregory back in a couple of weeks, so that will help out. You'll get Justin Simmons back, and we saw Caden Stearns get an interception as well, so you know that you have a piece there. But it's hard when you don't have another wide cornerback. As long as Surtain is around, you can kind of move your defense around in many respects to try to cover up some things. We'll see what happens with Josie Jewell as well. He left the game too, so you hope that you could be able to find somebody. You mentioned Chris Harris a little bit earlier. He's on the practice squad with the New Orleans Saints. But guess what? You just picked up Latavius Murray, a running back for the New Orleans Saints as well. So do you go back to that well and see what else Chris Harris has left? That might be something that you have to do. Look, it is what it is. Football is a contact sport, and generally nobody walks away from this game without any injuries. So you have to figure out a way how to go and get it done. And so you trust your defensive line, who's relatively healthy right now. You trust your pass rushers because Baron Browning looked really good. Bradley Chubb obviously looked really good. Randy Gregory will be back in the lineup eventually after 4 games. You have to trust that and got to hold on for dear life in many respects. They won't be the best defensive unit, but if they could be average and hopefully your offense could pick things up, it may have a chance to have, I don't know. I can't even say a winning season right now because I don't see this team in the end zone. So you just know that your defense are able to go and make some plays and cause some turnovers, give you short fields, and maybe you settle for field goals, right? Again. So we'll see what happens with this team.
Oh, boy. Well, that's enough for the Broncos talk. We're going to kind of switch over to the rest of the teams they have to see in the AFC South, which are the Tennessee Titans and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, they have to see the Tennessee Titans on November 13th. And they do come to Tennessee, by the way, to see them. Yep. They've had their own struggles offensively. Of course, first half they can score. The second half they can't score at all. They've been outscored, I believe ESPN's Teron Davenport said 64-7 in the second half of games. So they've been hanging on. They're 2-2, but you couldn't tell by the outrageous swing of balance in terms of scoring first half to second half. But even with that, they've kind of found their little bit of rhythm offensively, using a man named Derrick Henry. He's been getting better, and they've been using him in the passing game as well. So what's your level of concern with that team with Derrick Henry kind of getting going? And he probably will be pretty good and going by that point. And then the other weapons kind of finding their way, like a Robert Woods and, other guys like that, like Chika Kwanku, the rookie out of Maryland, those guys kind of finding their way. Is there a level of concern with Derrick Henry and then outside of Derrick Henry with the supplementary parts?
Yeah, I think the level of concern is very high, to be very honest with you. This is a team, if we don't forget, that was the number 1 seed last year, and they don't look like a playoff team. On the opposite side, and I know we're talking about Jacksonville a little bit, they look like a team that arguably is the best team in the division right now. And I don't even say arguably. I mean, they have a good quarterback. Their team just has different juice. Their offense is doing well. Can you say the same thing right now about Tennessee? I mean, think about what their offense did last year. When they had Derrick Henry, run-centered, strong defense, get it outside to your guys as much as you can and move on from there, especially with A.J. Brown. You had that reliable wide receiver. It's now taking time for that chemistry between Tannehill and guys like Robert Woods to be able to now start to move, which is why you see the deficit that they have in the second half. They have to get back to the basics of what works best for them, which is, yes, run that football. Yes, you do have to go and get it to your running back in the passing game as well, in Derrick Henry. But the main reason why you have to do it is because you don't have that consistent option that you had a year ago downfield. And This is where teams are going to have to really start to think differently as they go into the offseason. You can't trade away your guys because you don't want to pay for them. Ask the Philadelphia Eagles. They traded for A.J. Brown. They paid him that money, and look how good they're doing right now. Look how good Jalen Hurts is. Can we say the same about Ryan Tannehill? No, we can't. And so you got to make sure that you have the elite weapons on the outside to be able to help out your quarterback, which in turn helps out your running game, which is exactly what the Tennessee Titans want to do.
Well, I hear you there. The one thing I did notice this year, though, is they do have 4 different leading receivers in 4 different games, which is that's the first time I believe that's happened for the Titans in a long time, which can be a good thing, can be a bad thing. A good thing, you can't focus on one guy. Bad thing is you don't have a number one. So, just opposite sides of the coin, take a look at.
Yeah, but Mike, it goes back to the point. Would you rather have somebody who you know is a one, who you know that on 3rd down and 7, the ball's going to go to, and no matter what you do on defense, he's going to catch the rock? Or would you say, hey, we'll be a team by committee and we try to figure out so that on 3rd down and 7, our quarterback has really no idea who he could trust with the football? Give me that guy who knows the number one. Give me that number one. And you move on from there, which will allow everybody else to get better because they get single coverage or they take on a different type of cornerback, not the number one, so they could go and be able to get open.
Yeah, you definitely make very, very valid points. And I mean, it's all it's all on the flip of the coin and what you think, but definitely that number one makes you feel a little bit more comfortable.
Yes, yes. It does.
Now, of course, I want to ask as well, Tennessee defense, they get pressure with their front four. They don't blitz a lot. That can definitely be a concern with Garrett Bowles out for the season. You got Jeffrey Simmons in there. You got, Danico Autry. Bud Dupree hopefully will be at that point in time. And you have a young and up-and-coming Rashad Weaver replacing Harold. Now I'm forgetting names. But anyway, you have a Rashad Weaver out there too. So you have guys up front that can get there without pressure, without blitzing, I'm saying.
Yeah.
How difficult is that going to be with 7 guys back there, 4 guys, maybe 5 coming up front against the struggles that the Broncos are having and probably will continue having?
We still have to watch more of these games, don't we? It's Garrett Bowles is the biggest loss for the Broncos this year. Your left tackle is always one of the biggest losses you have. After quarterback, it's quarterback, left tackle, pass rusher, and then cornerback. To miss out on Garrett Bowles, a guy who hasn't missed a lot of games due to injury. To be very honest, I think he may have missed 1 because of an ankle injury and missed a couple because of COVID. To miss out on a guy in 6 years who's pretty much been a stalwart on the left side of the line, and in Denver, people complain about holding penalties from time to time. You're going to see that really show up. You're going to see that really, really show up. And so for Tennessee, man, they could be salivating, knowing that they'll have a chance. I mean, even with Garrett Bowles in too, guys were still getting after Russell Wilson. People at the guard position were missing out on their blocks. We saw that several times last night. So when you look at Tennessee, they're going to get after the pass rusher, which means what else? Russ, who has been struggling throwing the football, now he can't find those holes down the field. So now your pass defense gets a lot better. You're starting to get pressure with your front four. You can now put 7 in the secondary. How do you move the football? How do you figure out a way how to move the football? Which goes back to the point of running the football. You got to go and establish the run first, which would allow you to have more men in the box. Therefore, your play action pass will be able to go well. But if you're a team like Tennessee, look, you handle your business. You're 2-2. There's a lot of teams that are 2-2 right now. You do what you got to do. I'm not too sure who they have this weekend.
You got the Washington Commanders.
Oh, dude, get a dub. It's Washington. Dude, get a dub, okay? Get a dub, go to 3-2, and just find your way to that 7th spot. Because that's really what it's going to come down to, that 6th and 7th spot in the playoff standings. And to be honest, in the AFC South, you could be one of those teams who could make it happen.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Of course, we're going to talk about the team that's leading the division right now that a lot of people had some question marks about, but they have decided to kind of quiet a lot of those with the way they play. That'd be the Jacksonville Jaguars. I mean, looking at how they from the struggles they had last year, then they brought in all these pieces. They bring in Evan Ingram. They bring Christian Kirk, who's playing well, by the way. They bring in Zay Jones. They bring in Brandon Sheriff from the Washington Commanders. I mean, all these different pieces. They brought in Olaquan from the play linebacker for them. I mean, all these different pieces, and yet they're finding a way to make it happen. They're looking good. They went out and just blew up the the Los Angeles Chargers.
There you go.
And it just, they're looking good. I mean, what can you say about this team that just makes them look ultimately so different this year?
It's amazing what happens when you actually have a grown man in the building and you don't have a little kid who's running your team, right? Because you now have Trevor Lawrence looking like an actual quarterback. 8 touchdown passes, 2 interceptions this year. He's going to throw for over 1,000 yards in the next game going up against the Texans, who, my goodness, Mike, I've talked a lot of bad football already. Please spare me on talking about how bad the Texans are, okay? But when I look at Jacksonville and you look at what they have done, they made a trade with Laviska Shenault, knowing that they had all these different pieces, like Christian Kirk, for example, go and trade him away. You were thinking, why would you trade away a guy that you drafted a couple of years ago in the second round? Well, it's because the guys that you have right now, right? And they are starting to really mature, really look good as a team. They're trying to end an 8-game skid against the Houston Texans. And I'll be very honest with you, I would be shocked as a 7-point favorite if they're not able to do so. They just look better. They look confident, and they don't look like the joke of the league anymore. They look like a team that's really to be reckoned with. And I was shocked to really see what happened against the Chargers and how they soundly defeated the Chargers. Now, the week before, they had another great opportunity to get a dub going up against the Eagles. I thought that was a game they should have been able to come away with, especially when you had a 14-0 lead in the rain, on the road. You look like you had the game in hand in many respects. You gave up that lead. But this is the type of game where you have to go get back on the right foot, get a W, and move on from there. And if they could do so, I mean, looking at the rest of their schedule, and I'll quickly kind of run down it a little bit because you just talk about the changes in this team. I mean, you have the Colts on the road. That's a winnable game. Then you have the Giants, and then you have the Broncos. Let's call it what it is. In London, that's a winnable game right now too. So you're looking at a Jacksonville team that, I mean, their toughest game that they will play is going to be on November 13th at Kansas City, and then they take on the Ravens. So they'll have plenty of chances to be able to get a couple of W's that will really help them out in the standings at the end of the year.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when I look at the Jacksonville Jaguars now, they are looking better, but you also still have to, in the back of your mind, think it may be that time it hit 12 o'clock potentially too. Mm-hmm. So you still kind of you think they're looking good, but you also got to think about the Cinderella thing.
Yeah,
but just me. That's just me kind of thinking about them. But just thinking of a few other things. Their defense. I mean, you've got Josh Allen. He's finally got somebody on the opposite side of him that can actually make some things happen. And Trayvon Walker. I mean, you got Olaquan. You got Cisco at the safety spot making plays. I mean, this defense is actually pretty dang good.
Adam Gotsis is a guy who came from the Broncos. He's there as well. And please forgive me. I'm going to say Smoot. You have to help me out with the first name. I don't want to make sure I get this one wrong, but he has a sack and a half as well. You got Josh Allen doing his thing, right, with 3 sacks. And so you have guys who, again, you just talked about it. This defense is actually looking good. But let's not forget, this defense was doing that under Urban Meyer last year when they took on the Buffalo Bills and they held Josh Allen. And we know what type of pieces that he has on offense to 7 points, 6 points, something around there, right? They couldn't get into the end zone or something like that.
Right.
So you were able to go and win that game. So this defense has been there. They just needed the offense to be able to show up too, which why last week's game for me was so disappointing for this team. But if they could get past that game, win that one, you have a couple more winnable games coming up for you. Look, we've seen it before where teams who, even if they start off with a lighter schedule, when you start to stack up the wins, how they start to believe in themselves, and then they go and take on a real good football team, and they have a really good performance as an opportunity to be able to showcase themselves, to show off what they could do. It would not surprise me if Jacksonville not only wins this division, but really puts up a really good front in a playoff game as well. I would not be surprised if this is a team that we're all looking back at and saying, wait a minute, this is a team to really reckon with. And don't forget, Trevor Lawrence is starting to look like a #1 overall pick right now. He's starting to play that way. Give me another year of that. and then watch how Jacksonville will continue to blossom, especially with the pieces he has on the outside.
I gotta agree, they are looking good. I mean, another guy I'm kind of expecting to, as the season goes on, to get better for them. That'd be Evan Ingram.
Yes.
I mean, he's quietly a guy that can scare you, especially if he can catch the football consistently, of course. But
Yeah.
he's quietly a guy that can really, really scare you.
Yeah. Look,
Now,
let me
of course,
ask you a question before we continue on, because I'm looking at Evan Ingram, man. Only 99 yards, 13
yeah,
receptions, 16 targets. I know the biggest targets going to Christian Kirk,
Kirk
but
and Zay Jones.
What's the deal with not getting Ingram the football?
That's a good point. I don't know specifically what's going on, but I mean he's getting open. It's not necessarily like he's not catching the football. He's getting open. It's just a matter of, I think, the comfortability, the timing, and just looking for him in the passing game. In my opinion, that's what I think is the biggest thing. If they look for him more, he'll make more plays for them.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. It's just interesting to be able to see. You kind of look at that and you're like, wait a minute, Evan Ingram, a guy that came from the Giants who had a really good, career, at least to get things started. I mean, there's a reason why the Giants let him go, but he's still a real good pass catching option. And so, again, as the season will continue on, definitely Evan Ingram will have his opportunities to make plays.
Definitely. Now we have reached the end of the questions on the Broncos, Colts, Titans, and Jaguars. But I got 5 more for you.
All right, let's do it.
5 questions, 2 answers. You've got to make one choice. Are you ready?
Let's do it. Let's do it, baby. I'm ready.
All right. Which Super Bowl run are you taking? The Peyton Manning Super Bowl run or John Elway's last Super Bowl?
Oh, John Elway's last Super Bowl. Oh, my God. 98? Oh, dude. Oh, that team was so dominant. It was ridiculous. This is what people forget about that team in 98. They ended games so early. Like literally in the first half, games were open. You could walk away from the TV. They'll put 7 points on you early and just keep the pressure on. They were so dominant with Terrell Davis running for over 2,000 yards, Rod Smith, Ed McCaffrey. Come on, yeah, Shay at tight end, Shannon Sharp doing his thing. Howard Griffith was your fullback, and you had a dominant offensive line that used a cut block system and their zone scheme to be able to make things happen. And then defensively with guys like Darian Gordon, Steve Atwater, Hall of Famer. You just had a really strong defense. Neil Smith was one of your pass rushers, Alfred Williams, and then give me that team. I understand the no-fly zone in 2015 was all fine and dandy, but dang it, I want to see some offense, especially for the last 6 years of what we saw here in Denver. I love offense. I love seeing what happens. And it was fun seeing John Elway do his thing in that Mike Shanahan offense.
All right. Now I'm going to go running backs. I'm not going to go the top ones, but I'm going to go with a couple other names that people may recognize. Clinton Portis or C.J. Anderson? Which one are you taking?
Oh, you're killing me. Give me Clinton Portis, and I'll tell you why. He had game-breaking speed that you rarely see. And staying in the AFC South, how about this? I don't think we've seen game-breaking speed like that since Chris Anderson. Not Chris Anderson, but Chris Johnson. Chris Johnson. You maybe even go back to, and I forgot the young man who used to play with the Kansas City Chiefs a lot.
Jamal Charles.
Jamal Charles, right? You talk about those. I mean, few and far between you see those type of guys. Clinton Portis was fun. He was only here in Denver for a couple of years before he was traded away in a trade to go and get Champ Bailey. But, I mean, he was the man. And when he hit the hole, and no angle that you had was going to be able to stop him. So give me Clinton Portis all day, every day, even though C.J. Anderson was a dog and somebody very difficult to bring down.
Okay. All right. Now I'm going to make you pick between Denver Bronco wide receivers.
Okay.
Ed McCaffrey or Rod Smith? Which one are you taking?
Rod Smith, easy. That's an easy one. Look, don't get me wrong. Eddie Mack was fun, man. Had some really great catches. There was no one else who took a hit harder than Ed McCaffrey and was able to pop up all the time. But Rod Smith he's a borderline Hall of Famer. Do people realize how good Rod Smith is? I don't think people really realize it. I mean, when you talk about undrafted players, he has the most receptions as a wide receiver who was undrafted. He was just a dog, not only as a catcher and a route runner, but he will block his behind off. He played with that tenacity all the way throughout his career before, in '06, he had to go and, step away afterwards. But he was a guy who was, look, there was a reason why John Elway was able to go and throw the football because, yeah, he had Ed McCaffrey, but he also had Rod Smith as his number one wide receiver, and he was that guy.
All right. All right. Now, we're going to talk about these Denver uniforms, the old school Denver uniforms, or do you like the new Denver uniforms?
It's funny. I've always been a fan of the new ones, but I'll be very honest with you now, man. Give me that old uniform, man. Those old uniforms are just gorgeous, dude. It's just one of those things that you think that new looks better. You think that once you get like the newness and everything, like, okay, these will really work out. But then when you see just how bad those old school uniforms are, you got that Bronco in the head, those orange unis. Those are pretty fun. The only thing that you wish is that every time I did think about those uniforms, I didn't think about all those Super Bowl losses that the Broncos had in those uniforms, right? All the wins happened in the new unis. So give me the old school uniforms though with that Bronco helmet.
All right. All right. And of course, the last one. I'm pretty sure Richard Sherman will be proud of me for this question. 4th and 1. Are you going to spread out the offense and pass, or are you going to run the football?
I'm going to run the football. But I could give Russ an opportunity to roll out and run the football. I could do a read option out of shotgun. But you know what I'm not doing? Throwing the football at 4th down and 1. Run the rock. Trust your guys. Trust your big guys up front. And honestly, I don't care who you have at quarterback. Unless if it's Michael Vick, why would you want to do anything else? Trust your guys. Trust your big guys up front, and it's only a yard. Get that yard, pick it up, and move on and keep it going as well. So for me, I say trust your guys, or you could talk about Broncos country, let's cry, rather than let's ride, to say the least.
I tell you what, Richard Sherman definitely wasn't doing a lot of crying after the game. He definitely was working on his stand-up routine after the game, because he let's see, at halftime he talked about looking at the man in the mirror, that one person need to look at the man in the mirror, but Michael Jackson. And then after the game he talked about Smooth Criminal. I was like, man, he is giving Russ the business in this post up here today.
Russ signed a deal, $245 million. And Mike, here's a stat for you. I did some research. So I'm talking about the first 4 games. Now, I don't know how it is after the first 5 games. I would imagine it might be even worse. Russ, after 4 games, has thrown the lowest number of touchdown passes that he did as a rookie. The lowest he had as a rookie. Through 4 touchdown passes after 4 games, through 4 touchdowns after 4 games as a rookie. Has never done that again in his career. Now you look, I think after 5 games, and I'm just guessing here, but I'm assuming that after 5 games, I've only thrown 4 touchdown passes. That's the lowest in his career. There's a huge issue going on, and the Broncos better figure it out immediately, because you know what? Nathaniel Hackett, he could go, but Russ will be staying because you signed him to that big deal.
Right, right. And then honestly, I'm wondering if he is going to go, if this continues after this year. I really wonder.
You can't, because you signed him to that deal. You're stuck.
No.
The Broncos are literally
like being a Hackett.
Well,
being a Hackett.
Well, I always will say this, is that it's easier to go replace a coach for, say, who making $20, $25 million in his career than replace somebody who's making $250 million overall, right? And that's the difference, is you got to go and walk in and say, hey, who do you want? Who works best with you? And move on from there. So literally, Nathaniel Hackett's job is on the line. And guess what? Next Monday night, not the Monday obviously coming up, but next Monday night against the Chargers, that is the make it or break it game for the Broncos. They have the Jets coming up. Then they have Jacksonville and London. Then they come back after the bye week and take on Tennessee at Tennessee. The reality is this. If you don't win this game against the Chargers coming up, you can forget not only any postseason plans, but then you have to start thinking about trading some guys away, because your first or second round pick, that's in Seattle.
Oh, boy. Could be some treacherous times.
Yeah, buddy.
Denver. All right. Well, thank you for coming on and talking with me, Justin. And you will give everyone where they can find you on social media and what all you have going on. The floor is yours.
Man. Find me at Justin Adams TV on Twitter, as well as on Instagram. And I have Justin Adams TV as well on TikTok and everything. So hit me up from there. Calling games for the Pac-12 network as well. Always a blessing to be able to do so. I work at CBS News Colorado, sports news anchor, and reporter as well. So it's a lot of fun to be able to do this. But I will say this, even though it's terrible right now, and Broncos aren't doing so well, the Colorado Avalanche, they're actually doing pretty well. I tell you what, if you want to put a smile on your face, just look at some hockey, all right? I know we're a football podcast, but don't forget about that hockey, okay?
Hey, I know you got to go somewhere to get a smile in, right?
Oh, man, got it in the worst way. Oh, and by the way, it might, before I go, man, to the Texas fans, okay, look, I really appreciate you guys. Brandon Cooks, he's actually on my fantasy team, right? He leads the team in receptions, but you guys are terrible too. Like, bad. So you probably want to go get that number 1 pick, Davis Mills. He's a really good backup, but he's not the guy. Go get you a number 1 and rebuild your team right there. And you know what, to be honest, Jacksonville is showing you the way. If you could be able to get you that top flight quarterback, get you a really good head coach, or at least a really good offensive coordinator, give yourself a little bit of time and some pieces on the outside, you could be leading this division as well.
And what you're basically saying is that the Houston Texans need to stink loud for CJ Stroud, and they need to be dead wrong for Bryce Young.
Yes. I need a tank to come out immediately.
Man, just have Master P and all Nolan to come out.
That's right. Be a theme song.
All right. Well, we got to end this episode. Thank everyone for tuning in. You've been tuned in to Touring the AFC South with your host, Mike Patton. We're out.